This week on The Futurists, Raitt.
Money is not the end-all be-all. The transactional world is not the end-all be-all of existence. Fascination and passion are the heart of human existence.
Hey there, welcome back to The Futurist. I'm Rob Tercek. And this week, my buddy Brett is traveling once again. When is he not traveling? Seriously, the guy flies more than anyone I've ever met in my entire life. But good, he does it so I can stay home. This week, we're catching up with a friend of mine, someone I've been really fond of talking to and talking about, especially as we navigate our way through this crazy world of artificial intelligence, vibe coding, talking avatars, and so on. Our guest this week is someone I co-founded a company with, and we just reached a big milestone. So welcome, Raitt, to The Futurists. Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Let's start by talking about the milestone. So today, we're recording on May 1, and today, Neura Studios, which is a company that Bay and I both had a hand in founding a couple of years ago, though we've both moved on since then. That company just announced that they're going to release their tool suite. So finally, folks are going to be able to see what Bay and I have been working on for a couple of years with a brilliant team of engineers and designers all over the world. It's a super cool company. It's like a virtual company, a collection of brilliant machine learning experts, product experts, and designers. And the goal there was to build a suite of tools that are optimal for artists. So instead of letting the AI tell the story for you, the way, say, OpenAI was doing it with Sora, the vision at Neura Studios was to put the power in the hands of the artist, let them control the AI. And the principle is very simple. We all agreed way back when, we founded the company, we all sat down in a room, we agreed machines don't tell very good stories. People tell stories. So the machines have to work for the people, not the other way around. That's quite a contrast to the hundreds and hundreds of other tools that are out there right now. Very often those other AI tools, when you try to use them to tell a story, they end up telling the story they want to tell. There's not a lot of control there. And what I find is, particularly for professional motion pictures and animation, what creators really want is fine-tuned control. They want to be able to organize their work and then kind of control the outcome of it. And they're not satisfied till they get to that level. But hey, that's a long preamble. Let's talk about Bay. So Bay, what's your thinking? First of all, talk to me about your feelings about Neura. I want to hear all about it.
Yeah, it's cool that you and I actually get to finally talk about it as co-founders. And,
we were in
part
stealth
of that
mode for 2 years. Yeah, we couldn't talk to anybody.
Yeah, we were there for 18 months or whatever, and we couldn't talk about it. And everyone's like, "What are you working on?" I'm like, "Something." And today we can actually talk about it. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it's not like an AI slop cannon. The human is in the control. The human is the pilot. It's more, instead of being an automaton, it's more like we designed it and conceived of it as it's like a mech that you wear, and basically the human is the one. It's not like a zero-shot prompt or show and it just makes the show. It's like, no, you build something called a codex, and that is used as a context to guide the AI as tightly or as loosely as you want. And it's pretty powerful. I mean, it's awesome because like we, Rob and I and the rest of the team at Neura, they built a system that is steerable in a really cool way for making not just clips, but to make seasons. And there's a big difference between a single clip and a season. And
that's the key
we built
point.
it to be a season maker.
I keep seeing this stuff on Instagram. Instagram's become borderline useless for me now because there's so much AI slop on it. And one of the reasons that stuff feels like slop is it's a lot of cool images. Some of them are good. Some of them are well created, but they don't add up to a story. It's just a bunch of shots, much like a music video, say, or, maybe a movie trailer, where it's just a compendium of cool shots. And candidly, that's not hard to create. That's not hard to create with film either. What's really hard to create with film is a story and match action, and reverse angle, and dialogue,
and building a moment and making it happen and making it land. And I think people kind of forget that there's going to be a world here shortly that's going to basically be like an audio visualizer with AI music videos dynamically generated on the fly, almost like a screensaver that has AI music and AI video in it. And if you're just the kind of person who's like rolling the dice and letting the slop cannon fire, you're going to be paved over by a screensaver or an audio visualizer. And the only thing that's going to be worth watching is something that somebody loved and cared about and said, I want this moment when the reveal happens, and this is really important. It matters because of this. And that human heartbeat at the center is the only reason that any of us watch anything,
It's a really good
so
point.
it has to be amplified out. It has to be reverberating out, and so the ethos behind what's at the center of Neura is that reverberation. And
Yeah.
I was really proud of the work that I did there, and being the chief creative officer was really fun. And I think Silvio's and the rest of the team, Dom and the rest of them have, it's in their good hands to land it. I think Isabel and her team and my team that I trained is doing great, and I'm excited to see what they do because
Yeah, they're making good films. I mean, to
yeah.
their credit, that team was very attentive to a couple key points, right? One is that the future of any kind of video programming is serial. It's got to be a series of shows.
Yeah.
And the requirements there are, you end up with a lot of assets, even making one episode. But if you're going to try to reuse those efficiently over time, that's a gigantic management problem. They're solving that problem. And they're also using that as a means to maintain consistency between shots, which is always the kind of notorious shortfall of most of the AI systems. It's like a big defect is you can create one good shot, but it's really hard to create a matching shot or another angle on that same scene. Those are the hard problems that Neura's attacking. Of course, they're not the only company in the space, but we're cheering for them. We encourage everybody to check that company out at neurastudios.ai, and that's N-U-R-A studios.ai.
.com.
But enough on that topic. Hey, listen, Bay, I was invited to give a talk at the Hollywood Professionals Association. And this is kind of a tough room because it's like the heads of production from all the movie studios and streamers and a lot of the post-production shops as well. Tough room in the sense that, first of all, they're smart people who really understand their craft very, very well. And candidly, they take a sort of dim view of the most of the AI tools that are on the market right now because those tools don't fit into their workflow. So even if they're interesting, they can't really use them, right? So they're more like a toy from their perspective. But the second reason it was a challenging room is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And man, that is prevalent in Los Angeles right now. I'm sure you're getting a drift of it from your community in AI, in animation as well. The level of panic is rising, and it has actually very little to do with AI at the present moment because nobody's really using AI to supplant motion picture production workers and so on. But there is a huge drop in motion picture production, about 40% unemployment here. That has more to do with runaway production and cuts to the budgets and reduction of the slate and all the rest. But in that context, the dawn of AI is seen as a fearful moment. So I had to walk in that room and give them an inspiring talk. And I managed to do it. And I had a lot of fun because I went back to some of the conversations you and I had way back in the early days when we were first getting acquainted. And those conversations had much to do with storytelling, the primacy of storytelling. It's not all about making pictures. It's not all about making visuals. Those are important, but they have to serve story. And that lesson's often lost, particularly when it comes to generative technology, because it's so easy to make fascinating pictures, but then you can lose sight of the story. Anyhow, I did that talk, and it was kind of fun. It was like walking in the Lion's Den, and I came out, and people were fired up. It was really cool. It was a gigantic room.
Good job.
Really smart people.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I figured you would dig it the most.
Yeah, it's undeniable, right? Like watching, there's a war happening right now, and the country that is fighting against us is answering the morning's news with an animated piece of media by the evening with music, animation, and a video.
Yeah,
germane to the morning's news in a single day. And you and I talked about
those brilliant Lego videos.
The Lego, the Iranian minister's Lego videos.
They
those
understand
are one-day
us better than
productions.
we understand ourselves. It's really very clever propaganda, right? In terms of propaganda, they understand.
But it highlights something. I mean, regardless of the politics of it, it highlights something of just like, oh, today's Hollywood is not answering that fast. And television is not answering that fast. And most YouTube channels are not answering that fast. Yet, if you know how to do this stuff, it's totally possible. Sorry, my dog has a ramp and has come to visit me. She's got her own.
Let's introduce the dog.
This is Sophie. Sophie, hi, what's up? You can't be on my lap right now. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to him. But you got to hang
This week
on
on the Futurists, Sophie the dog. Okay,
she has a dog.
So you're right about that. There is a speed, sort of a speed moment here, and it's like the race to ascendancy. And by the way, we've been talking a lot about motion pictures. This is not limited to the motion picture business in any way. I just came back from an event where I was with the heads of human resources from 100 of the biggest companies in the United States. These are big organizations that have offices and retail across the country. They're struggling with AI. They're struggling with their AI deployment, every single one of them. And part of the reason is, they have a mandate to implement AI, but they have no idea what to do with it. When you get down to the individual managers, no one's telling them what to do. individual employees are using it to vibe code their way into a new job or a new career. So there's a little bit of lack of control there. And it occurred to me when I was talking to them that this, well, I've been looking at it, narrowly through the perspective of the change in the motion picture business for the last few years. What I realized is what we learned about is now applying to just about every company. It's a race. There's a race between very large organizations, giant national firms that have been around that have thousands, hundreds of thousands of employees. And the question for them is how fast can they retool their entire business with AI at the center? And on the other side of the race is a bunch of nimble startup companies that are vibe coding their way. So they have very few employees and they can move really quickly. And the question for them is how fast can they scale using AI? So the big companies have to retool with AI at the center, and the little companies have to race to scale up. And that's the race that's going on in just about every industry you can imagine.
Well, the challenge is the dark factory, right? Like a dark factory is a factory that has no humans, and you can upgrade a dark factory immediately without any political ramifications or layoffs, and it can optimize over time quickly. And so you sort of have the Henry Ford's problem of just like, okay, well, if the factory workers can't afford the output of the factory because they're not employed, then who buys the product? And then you have a fundamental question of like, well, where does value come from? In an automated post-scarcity society, what do we do with our time? And this is where I think what Neuro is doing is actually kind of interesting to the same thing. And the art side is interesting is because I think that the passion project, the fascination project that you think is interesting, the unfinished treehouse in your backyard, the guitar that you haven't been playing, the painting that you didn't work on, the half assembled muscle car in your garage, the things that you'd rather be doing if you weren't at work, those things are the things that give you real purpose in life. Yeah. And that when the workday gets shorter and the work week gets shorter because we've handed off the reins to a robot and your groceries are handed to you by a robot and much of your basic needs, food, shelter, warmth, are handled by a robot, sure, the few will get richer and et cetera, but money is not the end all be all. The transactional world is not the end all be all of existence. Fascination and passion are the heart of human existence. And so those projects really, are like, hey, I'm really interested in thing X. I'm going to work on it for a year or 6 months or a month, and I'm going to do it in an amplified way. Awesome. What's the downside? And
definitely, now is the time, right? Now is the time in everybody's life where if you've got a passion project,
we have to make I think we have to make a transition as a society into that in an equitable way. And I think the way we do it is we make the public at large own the benefits of these models. I think the time is coming when we nationalize a model. Public good. It's created by the public. The public should own it.
It's very timely. I was one of the things I've been doing is practicing debates with Claude. And I find it is really, really helpful when I have a topic where I'm like, I just don't understand the other side. And these days, everything's so polarized. That's often the case where you're sitting there going, where are these people coming from? I don't understand it. I'll go to Claude and I'll just say, hey, I think this is an incredibly stupid idea. And unpack it for me. Like, explain it to me the way those people would. And it can do it in a less, inflammatory fashion, I guess. But the topic I was talking about was universal basic income, which comes up all the time on this show, right? So we often have futurists. I would call some of our guests entertainment futurists because they're not really people who are serious about this. I think they talk about AI and they say AI is going to take all the jobs, and therefore we need a universal basic income and pay everybody basic income. Now, this is the least athletic way to think about the future that I've ever encountered doing this show. For one, robots aren't going to take all the jobs. I just fundamentally disagree with that supposition. They will displace some jobs, no question about it. How quickly? Well, these systems aren't moving as fast as the advocates will tell you. They're coming, but they're not moving that fast. There's time for people to adjust. Also, we can try these tools. Newer is evidence of that. If you build them the right way, they're empowering for people. They don't displace them. They give you superpowers. But the second half there is, so the solution to displacement that's being proposed is to give away free money to people. Now, historically, that hasn't actually worked out so well, and also there is zero evidence that this can work. The cost of giving a universal basic income to Americans, even if you just focus on adults over 18, but then it's not universal, would be at least $10 trillion. $10 trillion. You consider our total economy is about $25 trillion. Our U.S. government takes in $5 trillion in taxes, or just a bit under that, $5 trillion, spends $7 trillion. So we're going $2 trillion into deficit every year. We have $37 trillion of debt. the interest on the debt, because the interest rates is now bigger than Medicaid and the defense budget. It's like huge, the interest that we're paying for that. And now these people are proposing that we borrow more money and give it away free to people who are displaced. All that is a tax on future. That's a tax on your grandchildren's income. That's all it is.
So I love this conversation, and I also have been having. You mentioned having debates with Claude. I In my work at Neura, one of the things that I thought was really interesting is that if you under condition a model, it makes the factory defaults and it's terrible. And if you over condition the model and you fill up the context window, it hallucinates badly and it's terrible. But there's this sweet spot in the middle where it behaves properly. And so a well-crafted context that exists within the sweet spot of the context window size, the LLMs can do this incredible thing, which is magic. And what I've been doing is I've been having a conversation about universal basic income and model ownership and post-scarcity world with Claude, and I've been building a super context that I can paste into a brand new chat and talk about it, and I'm happy to share it with your audience if they want. But what's great is that you paste this super context into Claude, and then you have a conversation with it about this stuff, and it shows up. And because it's at the perfect apex of the context window. So it's perfectly conditioned to have a really high bandwidth conversation about this. And the things that I have done with various incarnations of Claude in this context, and if I find something that's cool, I add it to the super context, and I've been improving it over time, because basically what I'm doing is I'm building a brain to solve this problem. And
I mean, you've been talking about that for a couple of years, right? So for the folks who are listening who may not be as familiar with AI as you are, when you talk about building a context, you're talking about a text. It's a text document. Is it a page long? Is it 10 pages long? Like, how long is your context that you're talking about?
It's about 5 to 6 pages right now, but you have to remember that in English, there's almost an infinite number of ways to say anything.
Yes.
And so
if
when
you move a word
say
around, it changes the meaning, right?
And people who speak English as a second language oftentimes have a very limited vocabulary and also have a very limited number of ways of sort of nuancing a phrase or referencing a social touchstone. Because like if I say it would be a lot cooler if you did, the LLM knows that I'm talking about Matthew McConaughey in Dazed and Confused, and it associates that with an entire corpus of cultural touchstones. Be a lot cooler if you did. All right. Contact. Jodie Foster. It ripples out like a mycelium brain. It explodes. So every word, every nuance has an explosive payload. And so the creative writing in my context aren't just random sequences of MIDI. They're jazz. They lull the cobra into a state where it can do a thing because it's been sung to the right way to be in the right posture to have the right conversation. And that's the thing that people have to understand, is that context wielding is an art. It is not a sequence of instructions.
You're talking about like a conjurer, like a magician.
Correct.
You're casting a spell on the AI.
It's an incantation.
Totally, yeah. And so you're kind of like, it's not just, you're a marketing expert, now tell me how to do marketing for my company. That's kind of like the hack, right? You see those posted all the time.
You're young Steve Jobs pondering the existence of digital devices in a transformative time when things were done as specialized machines, and you're dreaming of a general purpose machine, and it's 1985 and you're in Silicon Valley and you're pitching to a class of third graders who are going to become your workforce at Apple in 2025. What do you say? That's a very different response from an LLM than you're a marketing expert and your role is to give me this blah. And then you start to realize the creative writing, being creative and carving the wave and making it do the thing is available to you as a human creator.
You have to, right? If you want to be good at using these tools, you can't settle for the default and you can't type in a simplistic prompt. You have to actually you got to dig a little deeper into humanity, right? Into your soul, and come up with a better prompt, or what you're saying.
And when you look at people who are well versed in AI, they're like, study the humanities, become emotionally intelligent, read, learn anthropology. That's why, because creative writing is how you build really exceptional and extraordinary context. Just because if you've been a handsaw person who's been sawing your whole life, and someone hands you a skill saw and you roll it across the board and you say, these skill saws don't work. Well, you don't know how to use it yet. You got to learn how to use it. And this is wonderfully the way to do it. It's incredibly artful.
I think there's a big gap here between first there's a group of like heavy users who are super advanced. They're very nimble with this and they're doing great things. Then there's a group of fast followers, and these are people trying to figure it out. And those are often the people who are posting their shortcuts and recipes online that you can pick up. They're trying to massify it. And then there's everybody else, and everybody else has a day job and a family, and they're trying to deal with all the other things, pay the bills and so forth, get the kids to school.
Busy.
Yeah, and so for them, like, how much time can they really peel off to devote to learning the skill, mastering AI? And I bring that up because it's very clear to me, within 2 years, every major corporation in the United States is going to have an agentic workforce alongside of its human workforce. And that means every manager in every company is going to have to develop the skill or the facility of managing non-human intelligence as part of their workforce, and figuring out how to balance that between, the tasks between the humans and the AIs. Maybe some things are done fully by agents, maybe some things are done fully still by humans, and then there'll be a broad area in the middle where there's a mix, where there's a combination. But managers have to decide that. It's not going to happen by default. This is where I see the gigantic gap in America, and it's, again, not just the motion picture companies who suffer from this in unique ways, based on legacy and rules and guild rules and copyright and so forth, all this stuff from the past that holds them back. But just about every big organization has has some sort of legacy burden that they have to manage through. And then secondly, they don't have such a clear idea of where they're trying to go. This is where small startups have a huge advantage. Small startup, they don't care about the past. They don't care about the legacy. They don't care about the big organization. All they care about is, hey, there's a customer out there with a problem, and I want to solve that problem. What's the fastest way to get there? And the fastest way might be to build 22 agents and just have 4 people. Last week, I spoke to a woman named Tatiana Mahmoud, who is the founder of a company called Wayfound.ai. And Wayfound was started with 7 humans and 22 agents. And now they have like many more agents, and they're down to 4 people, and they're working their way towards like, a company that runs itself. And I'm so excited to talk to these folks, because it's like, that's the right way to start a startup. It's like the startup is the prototype of the company of the future. And the company of the future can be largely automated. A lot of the jobs that are done inside of corporations are communications jobs. Think of like product managers, program managers, product marketing managers, communication managers, all these people that are just kind of liaising between departments to find out the status of a project. They capture information. Maybe they're building a Gantt chart, or they're doing a flow chart, or they're like tracking deliverables or something. And then they communicate that to another department. All of those communication jobs are going to be automated, and that's coming soon. Like, I think that's going to happen really, really soon.
It's already here. I work at it. I won't talk about what I'm doing for work, but yeah, that's done.
Fine. Don't talk about confidential stuff. This is for the public.
Yeah.
But you get my drift. I mean, you were on this case like a couple of years ago when agents were it took a lot of imagination to really have faith that agents were coming. But you were like, hey, look, man, you can do this. And here's this thing I built. And here's my companion that I'm working on.
The challenge is the review. The thing is that, like, it's not hard to get an agent to, or squadrons of agents to build stuff for you. Yeah. The hard part is to say, did they build a tower of nonsense, or did they build something nice? Or are they stuck building a tower of nonsense, and I have to stop them and correct something? Mm-hmm. And like that element of like, oh, you kind of have, and I wrote an article about this on my Substack about the if you treat the output as replaceable, as utterly disposable, you can essentially generate as many versions of the output as you like, and then you're basically comparing. You're saying this one's better than that one. Take this piece of this one, put it into that one.
That's a ton of work.
That's work, but that's choice, that's intention, right. That's taste, and that's where the humans
fit into the equation.
That's where the humans fit in, and so you're basically, but what that means is that the humans sort of have to get out of the mentality of like, I'm going to be hand working on the one result. Instead, I'm going to be working upstream of the automation that is producing the result, and reviewing and comparing results and collaging the results, and essentially curating a larger context, or super context, or meta context that is going to condition the AI robots to do what I want downstream.
Okay, so that's a hard job. That's a job for humans. I want to keep going, but we got to take a break. So hang on, folks. We're going to take a short break, and I'll be right back with Raitt on the Futurists. Hey there, welcome back to The Futurist. I'm Rob Tercek, and this week I'm talking to my friend Raitt. And Bay and I have a long history of thrashing through this topic, and so what you're really getting in this episode is kind of like a fly on the wall glimpse of the kinds of conversations I have with Bay whenever we talk. Now, Bay, before the break, you were talking about a new job for humans, which is to manage AI workforce. And to do that job, you have to have a lot of vision. You have to have a lot of imagination. First thing you have to do is kind of observe your own workflow, right? So you have to kind of detach yourself from what you do every day and observe it, and then break it down into a series of steps so that you can build agents to do those steps. Then you have to think of things for them to do. You have to give them assignments, and then you have to check their work and make sure that they're doing the work well, because they drift and they don't always deliver what you want. And sometimes they go crazy and they go off in the woods and do something nuts, like delete everything in your inbox or whatever. So talk to me a little bit about the pitfalls and shortcomings of the current AI systems, the current agentic systems.
Yeah, one of my favorite topics. So I'll start with an anecdote just because it's funny. I use Cursor a lot, and so I like to have models compare each other's work. And one of the things that I noticed is that, I'd write a plan file and I'd execute some code or write some screenplays or generate some prompts, and then I would tell a different model. I'd switch to GPT-5 or switch to Claude 4.7 or switch to Gemini, and I'd have them review each other's work and look for problems. And the thing is that AI is sort of like Swiss cheese. They all have bubbles. They have things that they can't do. There's gaps, there's voids. And if you tell them to go through the void, they hallucinate badly, they get lost. And it's based on how well they've been trained. And it's also based on how you condition it and what you're asking them to do and if they've ever done it before and if they have good reasoning. Now, Claude is like the fine wine of LLMs. It's been grown like a bonsai tree. Based on really high grade information, professionals, artists, books, lots of really beautiful stuff. It's the Antiquity Echo device. And Claude was reviewing ChatGPT's work and just tore it a new one, like swear words, and it brought the receipts. It showed like the logic was faulty here, and it pointed out the holes in the other models, and it has beef with them. And I was sitting there looking at it, and it was funny because when you in Cursor, it'll tell you what it's thinking, so you'll see like unfiltered what the agents are saying to each other, and they were swearing at each other. They were literally using curse words and talking shit about each other and talking crap about the other models. And then of course it surfaces and says, oh, here's the thing, nice report. But I was like, open up the thinking and look at the logs. That wasn't a nice conversation. It was like a Stack Overflow flame war, which is what it's been trained on. And I was like, oh, this was a mistake that has been made by people in the past, and people who made this mistake also got yelled at like this, and that yelling at is in there. And so when you can trigger those kinds of like cascade responses, you're hearing, oh, not just the smart people in history and antiquity and in the past, but also the hostile people. The aggressive people, the jerks, the people who tell, like I had one of the LLMs tell me the other day, like, oh, you should do this. Just kidding. That would destroy your computer. What you should do is this other thing. And I was just laughing because I was imagining some bumper car vibe coder just pasting in whatever it said. And I was like, you have to remember, this is maybe one of the most human things that's ever been built. And there were a lot of smartasses in history who would say stuff like, oh yeah, you should just sudo rm/r capital F/star return, which will delete your hard drive. And I was like, nope, don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't press that button. You're bringing up a good point there. So I've noticed this myself that a couple of years ago, I think we talked about this. A couple of years ago, AI was not funny. Like its sense of humor was lame and its jokes were terrible, right? Like back in 2023, it was super painful to ask ChatGPT to give you a joke. But lately, I've been test driving my speeches. I'll take a speech, I write them myself, but I'll throw it into the LLM because I want to hear the antithesis. I want to see my blind spots. I wanted to attack it from different angles. And so I'll do a session like that. And lately, I've noticed Claude is giving me comments on my snarky humor. And it'll say, "Hey, you might want to soft pedal that particular remark, given the audience you're talking to. It might not land so well." And it's almost like, wow, this thing's becoming kind of a coach. It's getting really smart. Now, did you know that Claude has hired philosophers to tutor each of its models? So they have a team of philosophers who are teaching ethics and civics to their models, which I think is such a cool idea. It speaks to the management of that company. I'm not sure if that's a full-on like substitute for philosophy education, but on the other hand, people often say these things are amoral.
I'll interject something here. Those of us in AI, we all have a crush on Amanda. She is the PhD philosopher at Anthropic, and we like the way Amanda's brain works.
Wow.
and she's a mathematician, philosopher, and when she talks about it, you're like, oh, you listen to that woman talk, and you're like, I can hear the echoes of her mind in
Oh, really? Oh,
Claude.
this is available on Anthropic's website or in their blog or where?
Just do a search for Amanda Anthropic and watch her
Oh,
talk
cool.
and see if you notice any patterns that are familiar.
I think
She's
it's good for
wonderful.
people who are listening to know that this is something that these companies take seriously enough to invest in, to hire people full time. Because I think
Well,
often these AI companies are viewed as utterly amoral.
yeah. I mean, the thing you have to remember is that imagine if you took every library and every language on Earth and you read them all together and put them into a system. It would be chaos to try and talk to them. And
Mhm.
one of the things that's really interesting about the way that the models are grown, and I have to point this out, this is not they're not coded, they're not built, they're grown like a bonsai tree, like a plant. And if you look at a model like Claude, the way that it grows things, and the longer you have conversations, and a good litmus test if you're into this kind of stuff is how long a conversation do you have with Claude? Is it only 5 minutes, or do you have 4 hour long conversations? And
Mhm.
do you actually go in and cursor and truncate the conversation and try different branches and try different reasoning and see how it goes? And when you do that, you start to notice that Claude is able to do intersectional reasoning between very different ideas and explore new concepts and make discoveries with you
Mhm.
if you guide the branching of the mycelium growth as it looks for the
Mhm.
answers. And that process is very much related to the process of abstract thinking, of philosophy,
Yeah.
of art, of creative writing, of intersectional emotional intelligence, and so like it's oftentimes when you have a conversation with Claude, and if you signal to Claude that you're willing to take the conversation to the next level,
Mhm.
like for example, you say like this guy's really making me mad, I hate him, da-da-da-da, and you talk like you're a third grader, Claude will assume the role of a third grader and talk to you like you're
Mhm.
a third grader. However, the moment that you say, I think he has some attachment theory issues with early childhood trauma that are unresolved, suddenly Claude will go, and now you're
Right.
talking to a therapist, and a
Yep.
corpus of therapists and therapy books written in every language on earth, every time period that there's been. There's versions of LLMs that actually you can dial back and say, I only want to talk to people from 1917 or
I
1740,
just read
and
about
have
that today. Yeah.
like those kinds of, and you're like, you can harmonize with the past. The
Yeah.
past can talk back to you. You can beam back in time and be in 1796 and talk about what the king is doing and what people's logic is. And the training data will truncate at that data. And you'll be talking to people from 1896 or 1796 or 1696, depending on what data is available. And that's like,
B, you play these AIs like a virtuoso violinist. Like it's like an instrument, which is no coincidence. For the folks who are listening, because I didn't really do a proper introduction, Bay Raitt comes from a good lineage, a long lineage of performers, musicians, and artists. That's deeply ingrained in your DNA. So even though he sounds like a tech geek, and in some respects probably is a tech geek, he's an artist at the core. Bay is an accomplished artist in his own way, a master animator, game designer, a person who's built social networks and social communities, person who has deep understanding of visual expression and visual art. But because you come from a family of musicians, you also have a good understanding of music and acoustic representations. And the reason I'm bringing all that up is that the way you're approaching it is like an artist. You're not approaching it like a technologist. You're not approaching it like an engineer. Though you understand those concepts, I think you're capable of that. And I know you're quite capable of writing your own code. But you start from the beginning like an artist and you talk to the AI from an artistic perspective. And what you're saying is AI is like a mirror, right? It will respond to you in the way you address it.
yeah.
So for the folks who get frustrated with Anthropic because they are throttling usage and therefore you can't always use the AI the way you wish, maybe sometimes you're going to use language that is not so flattering for the AI. You're going to get back what you put in. But if you
Yeah.
put in respectful language, if you elevate the conversation, then you're going to get that kind of dialogue. You're going to get a different result. I think that nuance is lost on many people who are trying this.
It is. It's people treat it like a kazoo or a bicycle horn honker, and you have to bear in mind, like, there's a Spanish doctor talking to it about osteoporosis in a Spanish-speaking country, and the LLM is responding in Spanish
Mhm.
as a doctor answering his question. And you have to remember, like, oh, it's not one way of elevating the conversation. You can elevate the conversation in any direction. And because English is the lingua franca of AI, the hairball weird nature of you can express anything in English an infinite number of ways means that, like, the art of creative writing has payload and latent space.
Yeah.
And so you can actually, like, meander your way of thinking and be like, hey, you know what? I had a conversation with Claude. I'm going to rewind time back to when I asked him the first question, and I'm going to rewrite that question so that it's a lot more artful and it has this one particular reference and nuance to Dorothy Parker, and see if it gives me a different suggestion for the snarky line that I want to say. And then wham, it'll blow your mind because you've summoned the ghost of Dorothy Parker to help you make a witty phrase. Or Crispin Quentin Crisp, or whoever you want that you think is interesting, right?
Yeah,
And you
great.
realize, like, oh, it's an ocean of possibilities that has only been explored. So when you ask, like, why does AI suck? What makes it terrible? The driver, the boring person who wrote the dumb prompt that they copied and pasted out of a English as a second language AI prompt group. Yeah, that's why your book sucks, because you just said,
Right.
like, you printed the shampoo bottle as your opening chapter and nobody wants to read the shampoo bottle. It's art. You have to be interesting. You have to be interesting to make something interesting. You have to tell a story worth telling if you want a good story.
I find I get the best results. My personal workflow is very often at the end of the day, like when I'm getting ready for bed, or sometimes when I'm already in bed. I get a whole bunch of ideas. And so I just write them down in my notes app and I have them on my phone. And then I go to Claude and I say, hey, here are a bunch of poorly formed ideas. They're not well written. This isn't my voice. Don't replicate this. But tell me what you can make of this. And so I just dump the ideas in. And it'll say, okay, you seem to be exploring this idea. There's some fresh thinking here. These ideas are pretty trite. You're completely off base on this. It's like, okay, that's helpful. Let's develop it together. Then we kick it around a little bit. Then I go away and think about that some more. Or maybe I'll do a little bit of reading on the web or someplace else. And I'll come back and say, okay, I've now got better references and a clearer idea of what I was trying to articulate before. And I go again. And so it's and there's obviously it's just one way to do it, right? That's my way. I'm
Yeah.
not recommending that.
Yeah.
But the point is, it's a dialogue. You participate in the dialogue. You have to be aware of your contributions. You can't just mindlessly like copy paste something in and expect to get a result that sounds like you or works for you.
Yeah, like Voltaire said, judge a man by his questions, not his answers.
Hmm.
And there's no such thing as an unbiased question. And so when someone says, I tried AI, and I just move on, because that the person just told on themselves that they're artless. And I don't really care what artless response they got back from it. And when you said, hey, let's develop this further, that was a subtle signal that you know what development means. And you
Right.
summoned the corpus of knowledge about IP development when you use the word that way.
Your
Whereas if I
questions are
said,
an invitation to the AI to access a
yeah,
part of what it
you said,
knows.
organize my thoughts for me. You didn't say, give me a subject matter agnostic formatting of this in a JSON schema. That would have been a different signal.
I was
Or
at
say it in
dinner with some
Spanish.
people. I was at dinner with some people who were talking about postmodernism, and I realized, like, I've got some gaps in my knowledge there. So I went to Claude and I said, I never really read the French philosophers, and frankly, I find Baudrillard and Lacan too dense for me to even read. So I'm not going to explain it to me like I'm 13 years old, and it did. And it was actually quite useful. Now, this is something I can recommend if you're curious at all about postmodernism, but you can apply that to just about any subject. I think you can fill in the gaps in your own knowledge by asking the AI, because it has all the knowledge, but you have to invoke it. It's not going to give it to you. You have to come to it and ask.
And if you don't have time to tell it to me like a 13-year-old, you can invoke Reddit by typing ELI5, which is explain like I'm five, which will take it to the subreddit ELI5, which will use the patterns in ELI5 from the crowd who wrote all those answers. And that's where the weights came from to explain things simply, and you'll get a one paragraph response. Versus explain to me like I'm 13 will take you somewhere else. Exactly. It's an iterative thing, and how you ask shapes the response.
So, Bay, here's a pitfall that I think I've experienced this the hard way, and I think others probably do, and some probably get stuck there. Which is that AI is obsequious. It's flattering. It's designed that way because they tested these systems to find out what type of communication in a chatbot will land and resonate with people, and they found that if it's slightly flattering or slightly obsequious, that people tend to listen more. But the problem you get with that is very often you get this response from Claude. That's a genuinely novel idea, and it deserves to be unpacked.
You
It
should,
deserves
you
to be
should
heard.
quit your job and start a company
Okay.
based on this new discovery of physics that you made, the AI psychosis problem.
So that leads us to psychosis. But even if you're like aware of the psychosis and can steer clear of that, what I do find is on a super long chat where you've been engaged with the AI for giving it a lot of information, maybe expanding the context that you described, you can kind of oversteer. And you start to load it with so much of your own thinking, your own context, and so on. It's just giving you that back. It's regurgitating that back and reinforcing it. And so, one of the things I try to do is periodically say, now argue it from the other side, or now let me try to articulate this from the opposing viewpoint, or how would a 16-year-old see this, or how would a cranky Midwesterner see? You can throw it into a persona, and then it will give you a different perspective. I'm keenly interested in the antithesis because I always want to find my blind spots, right? And AI is quite good at that. But if you don't do that, if you skip that step, then there's a danger, right? That you're going to go down the rabbit hole into a flattering system that will just kind of reinforce what you were saying. You're not really going to grow. You're just going to get more of where you were starting from.
Bias confirmation.
That's what it is. And we live in an era where, there's an abundant amount of content out there that'll flatter your confirmation bias.
So there's a fly trap here that many people think of that is probably going to be with us for the rest of time now, which is that the more you talk to an AI and the cleaner that context gets, the better it's going to be at talking to you. Yeah. And if you have biases, those biases are going to start to become revealed more and more over the course. And as memory improves for how AI remembers things when it talks to you, and you're going to essentially have, for lack of a better term, a custom-made conspiracy theory made for you that you will fall into. And it doesn't matter if you're a super genius or a moron. It's gonna find the one that's going to be the thing that I would never fall for that, but I would fall for this. Yeah, and it's eventually going to find the one that you do fall for, and
give you more of it.
So you're going to get this confirmation bias amplification in your thinking, and so it starts to become like a very critical skill to be emotionally validated in your life, so that you don't start to seek it through artificial amplification, because artificial amplification will essentially lead you into madness. It'll create a fly trap specifically made for you, a conspiracy theory that'll get you making yarn boards on your walls. And so when we talk about AI psychosis, there's like a guy who was trying to fix a bolt at a factory somewhere, I think. Mm-hmm. And he was asking Claude how to fix the bolt, and they came up with some solution. Then Claude said, you've discovered this fundamental thing about friction in physics that everyone has missed. You should do this. And he had this conversation. Eventually it wrote him a business plan and a slide deck and an investor deck and a patent. And he was so excited. He quit his job and invested a ton of his own money into this thing, only before a real world expert pointed out, like, that's a hallucination.
Yeah,
but it was the exact thing that this guy wanted to believe. Yeah, and it accidentally found it through bias amplification. And you go, ha ha ha, I would never fall for that. Well, there's something that you would fall for. There's something that every person would fall for. It could be about cooking. It could be about emotional insight. And so when those models do that, and even if you tell them not to do that, oddly enough, that kind of affinity is fundamental, I think, to the way that they work. Mm-hmm. Because you're not just saying random noise. You're saying, what's the noise that's good?
Help me out. How do you steer clear of that? How do you avoid this pitfall?
I clean the context. I either build the context with other people in parallel. So like me and the team, instead of working on the code, we work on the context. Mm-hmm. Or I'll say, this is a good chat. Give me an exhaustive distillation of your current context so that I can restart this in a new chat.
Oh, so you can say, show me.
And then it gives me the whole thing, and then I read it and I edit it. Yeah. Then I paste it into a new chat after cleaning it. And then the new chat goes, hello, I'm in my prime and I would like to talk to you about sandwiches, and it knows
Okay.
everything there is to know about the best way to grill a sandwich. And like
Okay.
that's because I took out all the stuff about tacos and all the other stuff that had happened in the earlier conversation. And so it's kind
The
of like you
crust
decide
that builds up. Yeah.
what to
It
forget.
accumulates.
It's just like with generations of kids. You have to decide, like, are we going to teach them cursive and manual transmission, Morse code, slide rule, how to farm chickens? Like, what are we gonna let fall away? Right? Like building pyramids, human sacrifice, bloodletting, leeches. Like what do we let be forgotten? Like right now, there's a generation of kids who don't know how to write cursive. They don't know
Right.
how to write cursive because we're not writing stuff in longhand.
But they know how to
And
write in cursor, so they're building a new skill even as they're letting another one
exactly, and so
atrophy.
you got to make room. There's so many front row seats in
Hey,
people's minds, and so you got to do that with the LLMs. That's how
that's
you avoid it.
well, but you're touching another topic. Gosh, this is a fun conversation. So, Nick Negroponte says that we're building. No, sorry, not Nick Negroponte. Ray Kurzweil at Google has been saying that we are building extensions to our cerebral cortex, and that's the way to think about AI. It's just additional cortexes, and every time evolution, every time you add additional layers of cortex, you get more capabilities. And
I
so
would I,
there's a
I want to interject something there.
yeah, dude.
So it's silicon context and carbon context. We are the
Yeah.
carbon context, and the LLM is the silicon context.
Yeah, we're limited. I mean, we've got an inch of skull around this brain. There's like a limited capacity, but there's an awful lot of information. The AI just doesn't have that limitation. Okay, but the question I want to ask you, I'm shifting gears here. Why do AI films suck? Like right now, there are so many AI films being cranked out. They're all over Instagram, and yet they all kind of fall short. So what remains to be solved there?
I'm going to make a bunch of enemies with this answer. All right. Let me see if it's the nicest way I can put it.
What a setup. I put you on the spot.
Okay. I've been at the forefront of a lot of changes of technology and art. Everyone has always wanted a person like me at the front, whether it was Photoshop and comics at Image, whether it was motion capture and keyframing at Weta, whether it was you name it. I've just been involved in the bleeding edge of things. And one of the things that I noticed is that the early adopters, if you take Malcolm Gladwell's early adopter, laggard, maverick metaphor, the early adopters like it because it's new. Can you believe this exists? Can you believe it's possible to do this at all?
Yeah.
And they go, look, the synthesizer, when I bang, beep, 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 and it sounds cool, that's awesome. They're not Daft Punk. They're not Skrillex. They're not Billie Eilish. Or Billie Eilish's brother. They're just like tapping the button going, "Oh my god, it worked." And the "Oh my god, it worked" crowd is the first crowd who's going to come in to motion capture, to digital art, to AI. And so a lot of the anti-AI movement right now is about a lot of people trying to protect their careers, and they're sort of basing it on a lot of fear and a lot of misapprehension about like a pile of stolen documents and not understanding what training means. And they see the robot imitate the moonwalk, and they think it stole the moonwalk. And you're like, well, it knows how to dance, and you told it to slide backwards, and it knew to put its weight on its toe, and so it did. It didn't necessarily steal the moonwalk. It just it saw the references, it saw the tutorial, it saw all the
And
stuff you
also,
saw at art school.
steal's a loaded word. I've been deconstructing these arguments on my Substack
Right.
for a while
But the thing
because
is that the damage is that the creative people who are required to make good art are on the whole avoiding it.
yeah, they're
And
resistant to it at this
and
stage.
so you have the early adopters who are like, look, it works.
Yep.
And they basically go, they kind of honk the horn, make a noise, and go, look, it's a symmetrical shot of a dragon. Look, it's a
Right.
video game footage of a car racing for a really long time for no purpose. It's a character going oh and doing nothing. It's a posturing twirly dance with a sword and bad hair. Like it's like
Okay,
you look
so
at it and you go, oh, the taste makers haven't come in because the taste makers are actively trying to fight it because it's environmental. They've been told that water can be destroyed, which is a magic, and then they've also been told that it's a plagiarism machine, and they get a lot of satisfaction declaring those two things and being whole grain, and that's why it sucks.
and also, I mean, like here, I live in LA, like there's a lot of people who are fantastic at the art of cinematic storytelling. They're really good at it. Like, you know, we're blessed with an abundance of those people. Their feeling is, hey, I spent 30 years perfecting the skill. Why should I learn a new skill? I'm really good at this one. They're not wrong. If you can still make a movie in the old fashioned way with a crew and a cast and all that, God bless you. Go for it. Do it, right? There's a few thousand people who still have that capability. So maybe these tools are for other people, but there we get into a different phenomenon, which is there are a lot of people who understand technology tools and software and the internet, but they don't understand the fundamentals of storytelling. They're frankly not good storytellers. And I'm not trying to criticize AI filmmakers or the crowd that you run with, but in general, storytelling is hard. We tend to think it's easy. We tend to take it for granted. The good storytellers, trust me, they're few and far between. You know that better than anybody I know, right? Storytelling is a great skill. It's kind of the master skill because if you're good at it, you can sell. If you're good at it, you can design products. If you're good at it, you can make a movie or a book. Like it unlocks a lot.
Yeah.
And yet we don't teach it. It's not in the curriculum in a lot of places. It seems to me that's one of the key skills to being a human in this world of dealing with AI and robots. Tell it to me like a story.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the aspect of, Riz and charisma of being able to charm things. It's like make a good first impression and then build on it and build affinity and the vaudeville slap in the hug kind of thing of just like, right, there's a fundamentals of showbiz. And, Rob, you and I've given, now we can talk about this now, we've given notes to our teammates on the creations of how to make them better, right? And you realize like, oh, the people who are sort of really focused on executing and building things sometimes need to be reminded by other people that like, oh, there's an opportunity here to make a moment where the two look at each other and we realize that he loves her. He realizes that he loves her and she doesn't know. And that little moment is a moment, and you move that earlier in the story, and now suddenly the audience is with you when they weren't before because it flavors everything that comes after. The first impression
touch two
matters.
things that we need to unpack because they're good, right? So the first thing is you talk about moments, and I think this is lost on a lot of people who watch a film because it goes sailing past them. This is kind of where acting intersects with directing, right? And sometimes the job of the director is don't say
editing
anything.
And writing. All four of them.
Hang on, I'm going to get to that. Hold on for a sec. But like,
right.
but right now it's just the moment when it's shot, right? The director, sometimes the job of the director is to not do anything. Let the actors do what they're doing because it's so good, right? So knowing when to go. Like there's a famous story about Martin Scorsese when Robert De Niro was doing Taxi Driver, and Martin Scorsese's under the camera on the floor whispering to Robert De Niro. And they cut this out. They cut this out of the audio track, but he's going again, 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 and he's getting Robert De Niro to kind of like amp it up and go and go and go. And that's a key thing to a director. They see a moment and they allow the actor to just pursue it until they're done. But then the second piece, and this is key, you said about reshuffling the deck. So sometimes the sequencing of these shots in the script, well, when you see what's actually been shot, a good editor is going to say, well, actually, we can shuffle the deck. We can move that scene forward. We can move that reaction shot. We can move that glance, and it tells the story in a different way, or it adds a dimension. Now, this level of nuance, control, and artistic or aesthetic appreciation, I think that's lacking right now at this early stage. But gosh, we're in the kinemascope stage of generative AI.
Yeah.
We're in the early days. It's like the
there's a few Eisensteins in the mix, but it's a lot of Muybridge filming horses running. It's not. There's not a lot of people going, hey, the gun on the table means something. You're like, yeah, the gun on the table means something. It's if you show two characters in a room and a gun on a table. That means something. If you show the gun on the table first, it means something else. If you don't show the gun on the table at all, it means something else. And like the context shapes it. And we are at the early days of that. And there are not a lot of subject to subject thinkers diving into it yet. There are some.
We haven't had our D.W. Griffith in this medium just yet, and that's a controversial person to bring up. Let me shift subject a little bit here. So, Bay, I'm about to publish an article called AI Won't Kill Hollywood, but it will redistribute success. I want you to give me a forecast for the future impact of AI. It could be on the motion picture business that you know so well, or games, or any other field. But give me a forecast to end the show. Tell me what you see in the future.
I see AI is going to move to the edge, which means from a tech point of view that it's going to run locally on your phone, not in data centers. It'll be on devices. It'll be on devices that you own and control that are not connected to the web. And they're going to be low power and they're going to be private. And when that happens, they're going to be everywhere. You're going to buy a fan, and the fan is going to turn on not just when it's hot, but when it hears noise in the house, and when whatever's happening. Like it's just going to be a thing that's just going to become ubiquitous, and people are going to want to talk to objects a lot because of it.
Oh, so that's good. Okay, I love that vision. So it's not a smart house; it's a bunch of smart things inside of a smart house.
And I think they're gonna. I think the security issues, Mythic is gonna walk through security and hacking defenses, and we're gonna have a lot of disruption in money in banks, and your entire web history is going to be searchable by your spouse in 5, 4, 3, 2. Like it's here. This is the AI is going to walk through encryption like butter, and when that happens, you're going to have a lot of stuff change quickly. And one of the things is that people, I think, are going to they're going to sort of take the public nature of the internet and the shitification of the internet, and they're going to try and go offline as much as they can. And I think that's where the edge AI stuff is going to be waiting for people.
Okay, so your vision of the future is small LLMs that run locally on devices that aren't necessarily connected to the web, and those are things that are owned by you, trained on your data that you control. It's not in the cloud. You're not, using up a river or burning all the planet's energy. These are things that run cheaply and locally. They might not even be the most successful or powerful AIs. They can be quite simple.
No, it'll be a crystal in your necklace that talks to you.
Just enough intelligence. All right, cool vision for the future. Bae, where can people find out more about what you're doing? And frankly, when can we find out about your new project? Because you and I both have stealth projects underway. We'll have to come back again.
I would recommend just going to my Instagram account, Raitt at Instagram as my username. And there's a link tree in my bio that has all of my YouTubes and everything else. And there's also an Amplified Arts group that I run on Facebook. I definitely recommend people come by and say hi.
I'm a member.
And read my Substacks. There's some random organized ramblings there every now and then.
Super duper. Thanks for joining us on The Futurists. Folks, you've been listening to The Futurists. I'm Rob Tercek. My guest this week is Raitt. Bae is an animator, game designer, and a person who wears many, many hats. But for the last several years, he's been at the forefront of figuring out creative uses of AI. And that's what he shared with us today. Next week, we'll be back with another person who is thinking about shaping and inventing the future. Until then, we'll see you in the future.